What's your name?
My name is Jennifer.
Someone just broke in?
Someone broke in and I heard shots like pops. I don't know what's happening. I'm tied upstairs.
Did it sound like gunshots?
I don't know what a gunshot sounds like. I just heard a pop.
In a world where school grades were not just numbers, but the measure of worth, obedience, and love, one student chose to lie rather than face her parents with the truth. It started with a simple forgery of a report card, but it snowballed year after year until it became an entire double life her family knew nothing about. Fake university degrees, fabricated jobs, and a secret relationship. And when all of these lies came crashing down at once, this daughter could find no way out of the disaster except by committing a crime no one could have imagined. A crime that made her the mastermind behind one of the most shocking cases of family betrayal in modern Canadian history. The protagonist of this story is Jennifer Pan, born in 1986 to Vietnamese parents who had fled their homeland in 1979, searching for a better life in Canada. Her father, Han, worked as a tool and die maker in a factory, while her mother, Bitch, assembled auto parts at the same plant. Through years of extreme frugality and rigid discipline, they achieved their dream by 2004, purchasing a beautiful home in the upscale suburb of Markham, Ontario, and driving a Mercedes and a Lexus. They were the living embodiment of immigrant success, and they carried impossibly high expectations for their two children. Their parenting style was strict to the extreme, demanding absolute academic perfection and accepting nothing less than excellence. Their son Felix thrived under this pressure and went on to study mechanical engineering at a prestigious university. Jennifer, on the other hand, showed extraordinary promise in her childhood as a competitive figure skater training at a near Olympic level and a prize-winning piano player. But at 14, a serious knee injury ended her skating career forever, and her parents' intense focus shifted entirely onto one thing alone: her school grades. This is precisely where the problem began. Jennifer was never a naturally gifted student, and her marks hovered around the low 70s. The gap between her real abilities and what her parents demanded of her started tearing her apart from the inside. Rather than confront them with the truth, she made a decision that would control the fate of the entire family. She began forging her report cards to make it look like she was earning top marks. What started as a small act of desperation quickly became a permanent way of life, a snowball of lies that would not stop rolling until it crushed everything in its path. When Jennifer failed her calculus class in her final year of high school and lost her early acceptance to Ryerson University, she did not dare tell her parents the truth. Instead, she forged a high school diploma and a fake university acceptance letter. For 2 full years, her parents lived convinced that their daughter was studying at Ryerson on a scholarship. When her father decided she should become a pharmacist, she fabricated a transfer letter to the University of Toronto. She bought university textbooks, highlighted them, and filled notebooks with detailed notes despite never attending a single lecture. She even told her parents she was volunteering at a children's hospital called Sick Kids, working night shifts and weekends. To keep this fragile structure standing, Jennifer convinced her parents to let her move in with a friend named Topaz so she could be closer to campus. In reality, she moved in with her secret boyfriend Daniel Wong, a part-time drug dealer she had been hiding from her family for years. Her parents had always forbidden dating entirely and isolated her from any male friendships. So, Jennifer built a complete double life, sharing a home with Daniel while her parents believed she was an elite pharmacy student. This elaborate performance continued for years without a single crack, until the day in 2010 when her parents noticed she had no uniform or security badge from the hospital where she claimed to work. They drove her there to drop her off, and Jennifer panicked, got out of the car, and hid inside the emergency department. The next day, they called Topaz and discovered that Jennifer had never lived with her at all. With nowhere left to hide, Jennifer confessed to everything. No job, no university degree, and an entire life with the man they had forbidden. But instead of being the beginning of healing, this confession was the beginning of a far darker chapter. Her parents responded to the betrayal with total and absolute lockdown. They confiscated her computer and phone, forced her to quit her restaurant job, and tracked the mileage on her car down to the kilometer. Her father delivered a final ultimatum that left no room for negotiation. She must return to school, cut all contact with Daniel, and wait until her father died before she could ever see her boyfriend again. The alternative was to leave the house permanently with no financial support whatsoever. Trapped within the walls of her home under suffocating surveillance, something dark began to grow inside Jennifer. When Daniel ended their relationship briefly and started dating another woman, jealousy pushed her to the edge. She fabricated a story about a home break-in and claimed someone had mailed her a bullet to convince Daniel that his new girlfriend was threatening her. Then, in the spring of 2010, the idea of murder stopped being a passing thought and became a real plan. Jennifer paid $1,500 from her piano teaching earnings to a man named Ricardo Duncan to kill her father in his workplace parking lot. Duncan took the money but never carried out the hit. Jennifer was not deterred. She reconciled with Daniel, and together they hatched a far more brutal scheme. They planned to kill both parents and inherit the family's assets, estimated at roughly $500,000, so they could start a new life far away from everything. Through Daniel's criminal connections, they reached a hired killer named Lenford Crawford, who agreed to carry out the double murder for $10,000 with the help of 2 accomplices. Daniel provided Jennifer with a burner phone to coordinate the details, and they set the night of November 8, 2010, as the date for the attack. Everything was in place, and the parents, who had spent their lives building their daughter's future, had no idea she was planning to end theirs. On that night, Jennifer waited until her father had gone to sleep and her mother had settled into the living room after returning from a dance class. She went downstairs, wished her mother good night, and quietly unlocked the front door. At 2 minutes past 10 in the evening, she signaled the killers by switching the office lights on and off, then sent a text message that read, "VIP entry." 3 armed men entered the house and spent 18 terrifying minutes inside. They demanded money, and Jennifer handed over $2,500 from her own savings and $1,100 from her mother's side table. They woke the father at gunpoint and brought him downstairs with his wife to the basement, then draped a blanket over both their heads. The mother begged them to spare her daughter's life, never knowing that her daughter was the one who had sent them. 5 shots rang out. The mother was hit in her back and head and died instantly, while the father was shot in the face and shoulder, but by some miracle stayed alive. Jennifer called emergency services claiming her hands were tied, and her voice sounded like that of a terrified victim.
So it just broke in?
But investigators noticed the contradictions immediately. Expensive electronics sat untouched. The Lexus keys remained undisturbed on the counter, and the killers, who had executed 2 people, left the only witness completely unharmed. Then came the moment that changed the entire direction of the investigation. Just 4 days later, the father woke from his coma and told detectives what he had seen with his own eyes. Jennifer had never been tied up at all. He had watched her moving freely through the house, speaking calmly and warmly with the very men who had come to kill him and his wife. Armed with the father's testimony, investigators summoned Jennifer for a final interrogation. A seasoned detective spent hours building a false sense of security, speaking sympathetically about her childhood and her parents' pressure. Then he suddenly changed his approach and mentally exhausted her by forcing her to recount the details of the night in random order, before claiming he had satellite images proving she had been moving freely during the attack. After more than 3 hours, Jennifer broke down and confessed to orchestrating everything, but she clung to one last lie, claiming she had hired the men to kill her and that they had made a mistake. However, digital forensics experts destroyed this narrative when they extracted 116 text messages from the burner phone exchanged between Jennifer, Daniel, and the hired killers during the 6 hours before the attack. Messages that detailed the plan to assassinate her parents with clarity that left no room for any doubt. The trial began in March of 2014 and stretched across 10 grueling months, with testimony from more than 50 witnesses. Facing a mountain of digital evidence, surveillance footage, and the father's damning testimony, the defense found no way out. On December 13, 2014, Jennifer Pan, Daniel Wong, David Milvaganam, and Lenford Crawford were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. If you have made it this far, you already know that this story is unlike anything you have heard before. A quick subscribe means the world to us and helps bring more stories like this one to life. Jennifer Pan now sits in Grand Valley Institution for Women, where she will remain until she becomes eligible to apply for parole in 2035 at the age of 49. Her father and brother obtained permanent no-contact orders, ensuring she can never reach them again. All Jennifer wanted was to free herself from the pressure of grades she could never achieve. So she built an entire world of lies to hide her failure. And when that world came crashing down, the only solution she could find was to erase the very people who had created those expectations. But the result was that she lost the freedom she had been chasing, shattered a family beyond repair, and left behind a story that proves the most dangerous lies are not the ones we tell the world, but the ones we tell the people who trust us more than anyone else.